Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Dale, Lauren Frey, Grim Clover, Internet Bloodsport, City of Steel, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. I recently came out and said that I am boycotting all further woke video game companies from Japan. Following the whole Guilty Gear situation with Arc System Works, I have decided it is time to really start profiling these companies and really going after them if they really toe the line when it comes to like the SJW agenda. So I will no longer be buying any further Arc System Works games. I will no longer be buying any Guilty Gear games in particular, and I will no longer be buying any River City games going forward. I was going to put River City Girls Zero on my top 10 games of the year list, but that's not going to happen because fuck Arc System Works. So what other Japanese games are compromised? What other games should we be actively boycotting at this point? Really, I think Arc is like the first of a trend. Well, from what I've been seeing, it's mostly like low-level, easily influenced companies that just want to see release in America. It's companies like Marvelous, I think, released. The Rune Factory 5 guys were compromised, so I boycotted them. It seems like in general, it just seems to be like mostly low budget, like more fringe franchises at the moment. In most other major franchises, like the most we seem to be getting is like weird gender options. Like we get like body type A and B, and stuff like that. You get like non-binary options. If a game has a non-binary option, I will boycott it, by the way. Like it doesn't seem to be all that prevalent yet, but it is coming. I think it is safe to say. But like at the moment, like I think there are only really two companies that I would say are absolutely 100% compromised, and one isn't even really a Japanese company, in spite of popular belief. The first is Arc System Works, which I've already gone into, and the second is Sega, which is not a Japanese company. Yes, this really needs to be understood more by the gaming community. Sega is not and never has been a Japanese company. Just because it was founded by a couple of American businessmen in Japan, that doesn't make it a Japanese company. Just because it hired a bunch of Japanese people to network and like do stuff there without being like suspicious, without raising suspicion as to what they were doing. No, that doesn't make it a Japanese company. Sega has always been an extremely woke brand, an extremely westernized American brand. And that's why like Sega of America had so much power. That's why you had all these weird conflicts between different divisions. And it's a big reason why Sega, most of their IPs are so incredibly westernized, because they've always had that Western influence. Nobody wants to talk about it because this goes back to the country's origins in the 50s and 60s. But it's true. Sega is not a Japanese company. So as a result of that, we've kind of seen this weird trend with Sega where, first of all, their games have never been high quality. Like they have never, ever been good. People love to say otherwise, that like, oh, but they were good. Sonic was good in the Genesis days. No, they weren't. Like if they developed a good game, they hired a fully Japanese studio to do it for them, like someone like Treasure or some other associates. Typically speaking, nothing Sega produced was of any value. However, in the current year, I think most people kind of acknowledge that Sega has gone downhill. Like nothing they produce is any good. They basically have like two major franchises, two things that people care about, both of which I would say are incredibly woke, which is Persona and Yakuza. Now I'm not familiar with how Persona is woke because I've never actually played all the way through the games, but I am aware that Persona 5 Royal was censored and that it should be boycotted. But like I think the more prevalent issue going forward is the Yakuza games, because they are a series that I've gone through thoroughly. Like when I was subscribed to Xbox Game Pass, that was actually all I was doing, was playing through like all of these old Yakuza games. I went through 0, Kiwame 2, the beginnings of 6, the beginnings of 7, and going through all of these games. I 100%ed 5 on PS3. Like I've played a lot of these games, and one of the things I really did eventually pick up on, in spite of like my general enjoyment of them at first, was that they do try to present woke ideas in a digestible way. And by that, yeah, I mean they try introducing woke concepts to you in a way that doesn't come off as like pandering or manipulative. Like typically, Yakuza's woke aspects will be relegated to side stories or to things that don't affect the overall plot, or are like relegated to a single cutscene, or aren't all that prevalent in the grand scheme of things. But make no mistake, Yakuza is extremely woke. Again, there was a scene in Yakuza Kiwami 2 where like I think it was Kiwami 2. I've played so many of these games, they kind of blur together. Where like a tranny kind of like opens up about how he was born a man to Kuryu, and he tries like telling him that like, oh man, it's totally cool that you're doing this. No, it's not cool. It's not acceptable. Trannies don't exist. But like they're not worthy of respect or attention. But this is what woke culture is. Trying to present these degenerate, disgusting career chats or personal decisions as like something noble or something desirable. Like Yakuza 7 has this thing where it like glamorizes prostitutes. It's that is a woke culture summed up. It's like making bad things look good and good things look bad in comparison. Like that's kind of woke culture kind of summed up. Is just like trying to tear apart like the family unit while like propping up homosexuality and just general degeneracy. That is my feeling towards the Yakuza franchise, is that like it tries presenting itself as this cool hyper masculine thing, but in reality it's trying to train you to view the world as being more woke than it actually is. It's remarkable. Now it's in the early stages of that. I think that's what we need to think about when we look at like Japanese wokeness compared to Western wokeness, because like Westernized wokeness has been like prevalent here since like what, like the 60s at least, maybe even earlier than that. I'm aware of like pro-lesbian propaganda being promoted in like the literature world in the 60s, 50s, 60s. I don't know. I don't know about anything before that, but like I'm sure it did exist. It didn't come out of nowhere, right? I think it's the same thing with Japanese culture. They're just earlier along the timeline than we are, because they can't just train you to think that like, oh man, you're a terrible person. You have to like build up to that. You have to introduce all these ridiculous ideas that like have them be like accepted as the truth by the general public, or like at least the people like in control, and then kind of like work from there. I'm curious how woke Yakuza 8 is going to be, because I think I'm the only person who openly condemns Yakuza for being woke. I haven't seen anyone else point this out, and I think it's a big part of that is because is because of its reputation as just being like a high quality Sega franchise. People do not want to admit that the games are going down this route, right? And I think that's a big mistake to make. I think personally that the audience needs to make their demands absolutely clear when it comes to this kind of stuff. Because if you shove this kind of thing into games, we're not going to buy them, and it's actually a big reason why I've stopped playing them. Like again, I'd say the most prevalent reason is that like I got bored and I just naturally like fell off the Yakuza train, because like the games aren't that good anyway, and just it's the same thing over and over again. But like I think right now we're kind of at this point where like Yakuza is still highly respected in the video game world, and that just hasn't quite changed yet. I don't think people are doing these sub stories, or at least they're not like paying attention to them, because it's kind of obvious what they're trying to do if you're like aware of woke culture or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, again, it's not going to affect me in any meaningful way, because like if anything I like goes woke, I'm just not going to buy it. And I have been thinking that like, yeah, with all this woke stuff getting into Nintendo stuff like Toby Fox and Pokemon, they and them pronouns and Splatoon 3, stuff, and in a variety of other games, I am thinking that, yeah, maybe it is time for me to stop buying every major Nintendo game that comes out if they're going to try and push this nonsense in my Nintendo games. And yeah, that going, to be honest with you, is probably all anyone needs to do. Like, because this stuff, you don't need entertainment. That's the thing. That's why I get so angry at people like Nick Rekieta, who just kind of, oh man, it's so terrible how everything is going to be woke. No, there's always going to be. They're never going to have absolute control over everything, right? They're never going to have absolute control over the stuff I produce, because I am like thoroughly anti-woke, and if you don't buy my shit, that's your problem, right? Like, I don't understand like what the mindset is with these cucks. Like, oh man, the new Star Wars movies are bad, don't watch them. Like, don't watch any Star Wars material. I can't understand why people like have, for the past 50 years, have just watched mediocre Star Wars films. Like, honestly, in my mind, I think the only Star Wars media I legitimately like is maybe the first one, and that's just because it's a fun adventure movie. I've never thought it was like something I would revolve my entire life around. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem. More than wokeness itself, more than like the culture war, more than like SJWs, is that like the community is comprised of man children who don't really like understand that entertainment is not important. Like, fundamentally speaking, like, you don't need entertainment. Like, you're not seeing enough of these people just tell traders like, oh, we're just not going to give you money. Like, you're seeing these people like buy into it anyway, maybe giving like them an angry review, but like you still watched it, right? You're still like buying into their nonsense. It's I really strongly don't feel that the woke culture is going to affect me ever at this point, just because I've demonstrated over and over and over again that like there is no possible way it can affect me. Like, even before I knew what woke culture was, I was avoiding woke books because of the quality concerns, right? There were so many good books out there. I just found myself drifting away from like the shit that they wanted us to read in like in school and stuff like that, and more towards real legitimate classics, stuff like 1984, stuff like what were other books I was reading that time? Like older books in general, like stuff that Catcher in the Rye, like legit all-time classics that I think a lot of times actually go against the woke narrative. Like Watership Down, that is incredibly anti-woke because it's so ingrained in reality and culture. And that's like the long and short of it, I think, is that like woke culture, woke beliefs, woke ideology is in no way based in reality. So as long as you live in reality, and as long as you demonstrate that you live in reality, and as long as you like understand reality and are willing to like defend your place in reality, woke culture really can't do anything to impact you, like fundamentally. I really strongly believe that at this point. I'm not all that bothered by Arc System Works and Sega being woke because I know that I don't need these companies. I don't need video games. I don't need anything. I just need, honestly, I can get everything I need for myself.